And joining us now is Donald Trump Jr. He is the executive vice president of the Trump Organization. Sir, I understand you were on vacation. Thanks a lot for taking me.
I'm glad to be there, Sean. Always for you, buddy. Had to do a little family stuff this summer after the crazy year we've had, but we're back in full swing.
You got 84 days to go, and, well, the polls seem to be tightening now. Your dad got a big bounce out of his convention. Mm-hmm. By the way, you got, and the kids got, and you and Eric and Ivanka got great grades for the speeches you all gave. Hillary got a bunch of a bounce out of her convention, and she seems to be in the lead, about +5 now. And does that worry you?
Listen, I think I would obviously rather have a +5 lead myself, but I think 85 days is an eternity in terms of politics. It feels a lot closer for us when we don't think about the world that we're in. But I think we got a lot of time, and I think my father's going to run a great campaign, and we're going to be all working hard and out there. And I think we're going to do a great job.
Let's talk a little bit about what your dad mentioned, extreme vetting. Now, I have said this for a lot of years, and I think it dovetails very nicely into Hillary Clinton's positions because I think this is going to be a real compare and contrast election. I think there are two very distinct visions for the future of the country, and one of them is how do we deal with radical Islam, and she's reluctant to even identify the enemy. And your dad said yesterday in very clear terms, if you cannot name the enemy, you're not fit to lead this country, and if you cannot condemn the hatred, oppression, and violence of radical Islam, and you lack the moral clarity, then you lack the moral clarity to serve as president.
Well, I agree with that entirely. I mean, I think anyone with a modicum of common sense would agree with that entirely. I mean, we have an administration that can't even talk about radical Islam. I mean, we're more concerned, as I said in my speech at the convention. I mean, it holds true still to this day. I mean, no one's even learned from it. We're more concerned about the feelings of people that would wipe us off the face of the earth than we are about the safety and well-being of our friends and loved ones in this country. And it's disgusting to me.
Hillary Clinton has taken a lot of money. I've spent a lot of time both on radio and TV talking about this because she claims to be a champion of women's rights and a champion of gay and lesbian rights. And your dad talked about both of them yesterday. And then she ends up taking a lot of money from the UAE and Oman and Kuwait and certainly Saudi Arabia. They gave almost $25 million to the Clinton Foundation, $10 million to the Clinton Library. But
by the way, where no one knows where that money actually goes, right? I mean, listen, it's typical politics. It's typical of the Clintons for 30 years. It's, do as I say, not as I do. They have a different set of standards that they get to play by than everyone else. And you have the media, for the most part, in their back pocket. And that's what we're fighting against. It's not just, one-on-one. It's not us versus the Clinton campaign. It's us versus that campaign, that machine, the media, academia, everyone else that's been pushing this liberal agenda for so long.
Yeah, but if you take all that money from Saudi Arabia and they treat women like third and fourth class citizens and men, I don't know what your life is like at home, but I'm not telling the women in my family how to dress, and I don't tell them they can't drive, and I don't tell them whether they want to work or go to school or not. And I certainly...
I tell my daughter she's got to do all of those things. I want her to be as successful, if not more successful than my boys. I mean, that's, that would seem to be a very core value of America. I mean, you see that, the women in my family are strong women. I mean, you've interviewed Ivanka. I mean, she's an incredibly strong woman. And, I mean, that's what we want all of our daughters, in my opinion.
What I meant by that, though, I think you understood what I meant.
It's just different. They have
but as a matter of law, men decide how women dress. Men decide whether women drive, and in Saudi Arabia, they don't. Men decide whether they can go to school or not. I'm with you. I encourage my daughter and my son to be the best they can be. As a matter of fact, I insist on it. And there's certain value systems we have. But gays and lesbians are put to death in countries she takes money from, and you can't build a Jewish temple or a Christian church in a lot of these countries of which she's taking money from. So how do you claim to be the champion of those rights when you act that way?
Well, Sean, you do it because there's no one there to call them out on it. There's no checks and balance because, again, the media's in their pocket. So they've done that for 30 years. They'll continue to do that. And, the double standard and the irony of it is, frankly, ridiculous and incredible.
Yeah, it really is.
By the way, beyond that, you want to talk about women's rights. Look at their website yesterday. where they had to take out other parts of their rape policy as it relates to how women should be always heard and listened to in these instances. They have to change it because unfortunately they have a little bit of a problem with that issue, given their years of trying to suppress people coming out against former President Clinton. I mean that's what we're doing.
I've interviewed these women.
John. I mean, imagine a Republican did these things. Imagine a conservative was taking money from Saudi. They'd be calling for the death penalty. It's ridiculous.
Well, I think there's certainly a double standard. We see it on display. I mean, I think probably the worst offender now is CNN. I mean, I literally watched, there's this.
You mean the Clinton News Network?
Yeah, the Clinton. They have this little pipsqueak, so-called media critic, and his show is Unreliable Liberal Media Matters Sources, and it's sort of like the Media Matters show, and you got Brian, the stenographer Stelter, doing the bidding of Jeff Zucker, and so they literally have a professor from the Kennedy School of Journalism who calls your dad a demagogue and says, well, demagogues, if they're elected, that usually leads to dictatorship, and the guy never questioned him.
Well, no, I mean, the worst ones are yet when they have like a panel of 8 professional, liberal but professional people on a panel, and then they find like one Trump supporter from the street who has no real political knowledge. They just happen to be a supporter, and they put that person up against 8 people that do this for a living and try to make it seem like that's a fair fight. I mean, it's so ridiculous. I can't even watch it anymore. I mean, I try to watch all the channels and see what this thing is. I'm perfectly capable of listening to both sides of an argument in the story.
The guy lectures me because I raised questions about, Hillary's falling down. She has health issues that were pretty significant. Won't release her health records. Won't release her speeches to Wall Street.
I know people in those speeches, Sean. I mean, I live in New York and I'm in finance and real estate, right? I mean, I know people in those speeches. I mean, they told me that basically they thought she worked at Goldman Sachs. They thought she was a partner at Goldman Sachs based on what she told them, but it's what they'll always do. They'll tell you whatever you want to hear, and then they'll go do whatever they want. I mean, I think even Obama said that about her. They'll say anything and do nothing. And again, they don't call him out for that. Just like they don't call Obama out now. You have Biden running around talking about, well, Trump's lack of experience. Meanwhile, where was Obama's experience 8 years ago when he had done absolutely nothing? No real world experience. He was a half-term senator. It's a double standard that you'll never get around. I mean, it's a shame, but that's where we've gone.
I had this conversation over the weekend with a really good friend of mine, and I said, he said the media bias is just so horrible. And I said, yeah, it's always been that way. In 2007 and 2008, I don't know if you were watching me at that time, but I was pounding Obama on his relationship with unrepentant domestic terrorists and hanging out at the Church of GD America. And after 9/11, the Sunday after, he's saying America's chickens have come home to roost. And a guy that has no experience except being an Acorn organizer and a Alinsky disciple. And yet, he just read a teleprompter well, and everyone was going goo goo gaga and having Obama-gasms.
Yes, Sean, I don't even know how to respond to it because it's so true, and it is just one of those things. I guess we've gotten used to. It's just you can't even do it. Now, the one thing that's nice about it, at least when I look at CNN's ratings, I think it's being reflected because it is so flagrant and so obvious, and they're getting crushed in the ratings because of it. Because I mean,
that's all true.
It's one thing to be objective. It's one thing to say, hey, there's one thing to even slant one way or the other a little bit. But when they make it so blatant. When you have, what was one of the morning shows? What was it, Chris Cuomo the other day saying, well, we did everything we possibly could to help Hillary. I mean, they're saying this stuff on air. Like
that actually is fine. Listen, I know Chris is a nice guy, but I mean,
he's always been very nice to me. But he's terrible to us, on the air. And when they're basically saying we've done everything we possibly can to help Hillary Clinton, I'm saying what? Like they've gotten rid of even the notion that you're supposed to be objective. I mean, we knew it hasn't been for a long time. This isn't just this cycle. This has been years and years. But now they've gotten rid of the notion that it's even supposed to be. Now it's just accepted that, hey, this is what we are and this is what we're going to do, and we're okay with it. I mean, that's pretty scary.
There's actually Cheryl Atkinson reported on this. She's around news, I guess, correspondents and leaders, and And they actually say, we've now got to do everything we can do to stop Donald Trump. And I'm like, it's sort of like this little pipsqueak. Brian, the stenographer for Jeff Zucker, unreliable Media Matters sources over at CNN, lecturing me because I raise a question about Hillary's health. How dare I question that, or how dare I point out that it's a little odd to me that 59 districts in Pennsylvania in 2012, not one vote for Romney. 59 districts.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that seems odd to me.
Well, it's different. If you're a Democrat, you're allowed to have the dead voting for you. But if you're a Republican, that would never happen. So
no.
Yeah.
Well, I get to see your dad tonight, and it's a town hall on national security, protecting the homeland, and we're in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And the one thing that I get from people, and I was at a party the other night, and I don't go to parties very often. It was actually a Sweet 16, and they had the adult section and the kids section, and I was there. And everybody says this to me because they know I know your dad. We love him. We love your dad. We love Mr. Trump. We love, meaning your dad. We love Mr. Trump, and et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, just tell him, stop talking about everybody but Hillary and Obama. Stop talking about Mr. Khan. Stop talking about other people, the judge. What is your reaction to that?
Well, listen, I think he's going to be who he is. I think, usually as these things play out, there's sort of what he says, and then there's what the message that everyone carries, especially, the media. And I think they take it usually to a different step. But listen, I think you're going to see a lot of that. I mean, it's not the first person that's mentioned that to me either. But again, he is his own guy, and that's what's gotten him here. He's always going to trust that instinct, and he's going to, he'll always be himself. But again, I think now that we're getting into that sort of crunch time, once we get through August, I think you're going to see a lot more of that focus, on her, because that's where it needs to be.
All right. Donald Trump Jr., thanks for being with us. We always appreciate it.
My pleasure, Sean. Good being with you.